It was July 28, 26, and the city wore the rain like a cheap gray overcoat. Neon bled across the pavement. Somewhere downtown, a server room hummed under fluorescent light, pretending nothing bad ever happened after midnight. But tonight, the files were heavy. 2 armed robberies in Adobe ColdFusion, 1 armed robbery hiding inside Apache OpenNLP, and 1 murder in a self-hosted API platform called Hoppscotch, clean CVSS 10.0, the kind of number that makes even old cops stop talking. No repeat offenders caught in the act tonight, no KEV entries on the board, but that did not make the streets safe. It only meant the perps had not been photographed yet. The first case was CVE-2026-48332, an armed robbery with a CVSS score of 7.7. The informant's tip, the EPSS probability, sat at 11%. The victim was Adobe ColdFusion, a long-running application server still found in government shops, finance offices, universities, and old enterprise back rooms where business logic goes to grow moss. The weapon was server-side request forgery, commonly tied to CVE-918, server-side request forgery. Here is how the job works. The attacker has low privilege. They send a crafted request to a vulnerable ColdFusion feature that accepts a URL, host, or remote resource reference. ColdFusion processes that attacker-supplied destination from the server side. Instead of enforcing the right allow list or blocking internal addresses, it makes the outbound request anyway. The attacker cannot walk through the front door, so they trick the server into opening a side window that can bypass a security control and expose data the attacker should never read. The scope matters. The report names Adobe ColdFusion as affected, with the vulnerable range tied to Adobe's 2026 Security Advisory for supported ColdFusion release lines. Treat any unpatched ColdFusion 2021, 2023, or 2025 deployment under that advisory as exposed until proven clean, and apply the vendor's fixed ColdFusion update level for your branch immediately. An attacker gains unauthorized read access, often to internal endpoints, metadata services, admin panels, or backend APIs reachable only from the ColdFusion host. Exploitation does not require user interaction, but it does require a low-privileged account or equivalent access to the vulnerable function. The cleanup is straight work. Sysadmins and DevOps should upgrade ColdFusion to the exact patched update listed in Adobe's CVE 2026-48332 advisory for their branch, then restart the service and verify the build number. Short of that, restrict outbound network access from the ColdFusion server, block calls to link local metadata addresses such as 69.25.4.254, 9.254.9.254, 9.2018.28 targets were not required, and place risky URL fetching features behind strict allow lists. Security teams should hunt web logs for unusual URL parameters pointing to localhost, internal IP ranges, cloud metadata paths, or strange ports. The rain tells you where the roof leaks. The logs tell you where the attacker knocked. But that was not the only body on the slab tonight. The second case was CVE-2026-43825, another armed robbery, CVSS 73, with an EPSS probability of 9%. Apache OpenNLP was the scene, specifically the SVM docket model in the libsvm document categorization module. The technical break is untrusted Java deserialization, CVE-502, deserialization of untrusted data. That is an old racket. A program accepts a stream of bytes and trusts it enough to rebuild Java objects from it. The chain is simple and mean. An attacker supplies a crafted model stream to svm docket model.deserialize, input stream. The application reads that attacker-controlled stream. The application reads that attacker-controlled stream. Java deserialization has safely validated what those objects are allowed to be. If a dangerous gadget chain is present on the class path, object creation can trigger method calls that lead to code execution, file access, or other unwanted behavior. This is not just a bad model file, it is a suitcase with a false bottom. The affected range is narrow but sharp. Apache OpenNLP before 320 NLP before 320 mini war is affected, only on the 320x line, only where the libsvm document categorization module introduced in OpenNLP 1808 is present and used. OpenNLP is not a household name to the public, but it sits inside natural language processing pipelines, search enrichment, content classification, and internal AI tooling. Exploitation usually requires that an attacker can get the application to deserialize a model they control. That may happen through a model upload feature, a shared training pipeline, a compromised storage bucket, or a poisoned supply chain artifact. The remedy is clean. Developers and platform teams should upgrade Apache OpenNLP to 3.20 min 4 or later. If you cannot move tonight, disable the libsvrum document categorization path, reject untrusted model uploads, and only load models from authenticated, integrity-checked storage. Use signatures or checksums for model artifacts. Security teams should review application logs for unexpected model load activity, newly uploaded SVM document categorization files, and stack traces involving svm docket model.deserialize. Watch outbound traffic from NLP workers too. A model loader that suddenly starts calling the street has probably met the wrong friend. I barely had time to light another cigarette when the next file landed on my desk. CVE-2026-50160 was the murder of the night, CVSS 1020. EPSS probability 9%. The product was Hopscotch, the API development ecosystem in self-hosted Hopscotch backend deployments. The flaw was mass assignment, commonly mapped to CVE-95 improperly controlled modification of dynamically determined object attributes. In plain language, the server accepted more fields than it should have, then used them like they belonged there. The attack chain has no poetry in it. An unauthenticated attacker sends a post request to V1 onboarding config. They include expected onboarding fields, plus extra properties that should never be client-controlled. The Nest.js global validation pipe was configured without whitelist true, so those extra properties were not stripped away. The backend accepted and applied fields outside the intended data transfer object. If those fields control setup state, admin identity, authentication mode, mail settings, or trusted origin configuration, the attacker can bend the whole installation to their will. The affected range is self-hosted Hopscotch backend version 2026.4.1 and earlier. Hopscotch is popular with developers and API teams as an alternative to heavier API clients, and self-hosted deployments often live near internal APIs, credentials, environments, and collaboration data. An attacker needs no authentication and no user interaction. Depending on configuration, they may gain administrative control, alter onboarding, weaken authentication, capture secrets, or pivot into internal API workflows. That is why this one is a murder. It does not pick a lock. It gets the building deed rewritten. Remediation starts with urgency. DevOps and platform owners should upgrade Hopscotch backend to 2026.2 or later, the patched release for this issue, and confirm the backend uses validation pipe with whitelist, true, and ideally forbid non-whitelisted, true for sensitive routes. If you cannot patch immediately, block public access to V1 for an onboarding config at the reverse proxy, require VPN or admin network access, and disable onboarding after initial setup if your deployment allows it. Security teams should review access logs for unauthenticated post requests to V1 onboarding config, especially requests with unusual JSON keys beyond normal onboarding fields. Check for new admin accounts, changed auth settings, modified SMTP or callback configuration, different 9 unexpected environment changes. The night was far from over. The last file was CVE-2026-48329, another Adobe ColdFusion armed robbery, CVSS 8.5, EPSS probability 9%. This one was reflected cross-site scripting, CWE79, improper neutralization of input during web page generation. An attacker crafts a malicious link or request containing script in a parameter that ColdFusion reflects into a generated page without proper output encoding. The chain needs a victim to step wrong. The attacker sends a link by email, chat, ticket, or poisoned web page. The victim, already authenticated to ColdFusion or an application running on it, opens the link. The vulnerable ColdFusion page processes the request and reflects the attacker's script into the response. The browser runs it in the victim's session context. From there, the attacker may steal session tokens if protections are weak, perform actions as the user, change settings, or stage a deeper compromise against administrator accounts. The affected product is Adobe ColdFusion under the 2026 advisory, with unpatched supported release lines at risk until the vendor update for CVE 2026-20 is applied. ColdFusion remains common in mature enterprise stacks, often tied to portals, forms, reporting, and administrative consoles. Exploitation requires user interaction, but that is no comfort. Phishing is the city's oldest con. If the victim has elevated access, a reflected XSS can become privilege abuse, data theft, or a stepping stone toward server-side compromise. The fix is to apply Adobe's patched ColdFusion update for CVE 2026-48324 for your release line, then verify the installed build. Developers should add context-aware output encoding, validate input, and avoid reflecting raw request data into HTML, JavaScript, or attributes. Sysadmins can reduce exposure by limiting access to ColdFusion Administrator and internal apps, enforcing strong content security policy, setting HTTPO only and same site on cookies, and using a WAF rule to block obvious script payloads in known vulnerable parameters. Detection starts in weblogs. Look for requests containing script tags, event handlers like onError or onload, encoded JavaScript, suspicious redirects, and bursts of crafted links aimed at admin paths. 4 cases. No KEV repeat offenders caught in the act tonight, but every file had fingerprints. SSRF reaching inward, deserialization trusting the wrong cargo, mass assignment letting strangers write the record, reflected XSS turning a user's own browser into the getaway car, patch hopscotch first, a CVSS 10.0 unauthenticated path is not a drill, then close the ColdFusion gaps and sweep outbound access, upgrade OpenNLP where untrusted models can enter the room, watch the logs like a tired detective watches a hotel lobby at 2 a.m. This is Jack Cypher, signing off. In this town, the rain washes the streets, but only good patching cleans the crime scene.